Sometimes you go to a play and the main actors are out, and then you have like the really crappy backups. Welcome to the show today. I'm Stu, and for Sarah. Something reminiscent of what I just did.
Better not be the crappy.
Can you count to 10 again, Stu?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
It's not on?
Slide into
Very
or
on.
something.
It's very on. It is on out here.
Yeah, it's pretty on. Well, I think we did our job.
No doubt. Let's wrap it. Good night.
Right next to each other.
Wake me up when it's all over.
Because I have people next to
I can't get.
I love that song. It's a great song. Is that Avetti or Avanetti or something?
You know, you go to a play, and usually every once in a while somebody's out, and you get the really crappy backup performers who don't really know the lines or anything. Welcome to the show today. It's Stu. I'm in for Sarah Gonzalez, who's faking an illness. Also here, Jason Buttrill. This
I really
guy...
appreciate the crappy fill-in.
And Andrew Heaton.
I'm actually in for Stu.
There you are. That's weird. First, let's start with our top stories of the day. Jason?
State of the Union last night. Some people were calling it theater of the absurd, as a direct quote, but it was...
would be the type of person here that could be affected by a campaign like this, but it's actually not true.
No, it's not true at all. And look, what they want to have happen, it is so that it goes behind the paywall, so to speak, just like blazetv.com. So adults can buy it, and it's not out in the forefront for your children to see and read.
Yeah, this is Victoria Hearst from the Hearst family, and you know her family runs this magazine and has owned it for a long time, and she just doesn't think it's the appropriate thing for kids to be able to buy. And you know, again, she's not trying to limit Jeffy's access to this stuff. And she just wants the Cosmo to be put in the same section where Jeffy usually shops in the magazine store, behind the beads.
And I'm all for that.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
Exactly. So they have these states material harmful to minor laws that cover a lot of the stuff that Jeffy likes to buy. But Cosmo magazine should be there as well, as what Victoria believes cannot be sold to anyone under the age of 18. If you want to learn more about this campaign they've been working on for a while, it's CosmoHurtsKids.com. CosmoHurtsKids.com. And give it a shot and see if you're on board with this, it's something. There's some shady stuff in Cosmo, and I have small kids, and I can understand you don't want them reading that stuff. It would be nice.
Mommy, what? Nothing.
Those words don't mean anything. It's another language. Don't worry about it, son. Okay, so let's go to Jason, State of the Union.
I swore yesterday after talking to you that I was not going to watch this stupid thing.
Really?
I totally said, I was like, hey, where can I get the transcript? Okay, I had a plan to read the transcript early this morning. I was not going to watch it. But of course, I was just flipping through the channels right around 7:30 last night. And then I just happened to see Chuck Todd on MSNBC. And he was, I'll show you the clip here in a second, but basically what he was saying was, okay, we've gotten basically the rundown. It's going to be this big bipartisan, basically come together type thing. Mm-hmm. And he was calling it, well, see for yourself.
Millions of people are going to watch tonight's State of the Union, which is shaping up to be a night of absurdist theater. Absurd because the White House says the president's address is going to be about bipartisanship, unity, compromise. They say it's going to be a night of comity, with a T. They really use that word. Absurd because literally, as the White House is telling reporters about how the president is going to rise above partisanship tonight, the president is tweeting about a human wall. Then he mocks Chuck Schumer. And of course, Festivus begins and he airs grievances about the midterms.
So, anytime where you would, I didn't really buy the fact that it was probably going to be very, very bipartisan. I didn't really buy that fact at all. I was curious where that message was coming from. Even if, like, the president wanted to be bipartisan, I just didn't think he'd be able to pull it off. Well, I was actually very shocked after watching. Of course, I saw that. And I was like, all right, screw it. Now I got to watch it. So I watched it, and it actually was pretty dang appealing to both sides. So much so that, you actually had people like Ocasio-Cortez and Pelosi standing up and cheering at one point. The only thing that was
had to at some of those points.
Well, that's what it was crafted because of that.
Yeah.
Literally, if you didn't applaud for certain things, you could easily be called out the very next day. Like, what do you mean you don't support this? It was very well crafted. I thought the way that it was done.
There were also a couple of moments where he's like, stand up and give an ovation. They're like, we will never get rid of ICE. Like everybody's standing. They're like, okay, I have to walk that back.
Well, but I mean, what you're describing isn't poorly summarized as absurdist theater, is it? I mean, that's kind of what it is.
Well, so I totally get your point. The thing that I thought was absurd were the things that the Democrats weren't cheering for. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought was the absurd, the theater, the absurd there. It started off when I first noticed it. The president was talking about record low unemployment rates. Now, you can have an awesome debate if you want to on whether the president can even take credit for that, other factors,
sure,
the outside what the president actually has the ability to do. Fine, whatever. But you can stand up and applaud for record low numbers of African American, Asian American, and Hispanic unemployment. That's a bipartisan thing. Now, how can you sit there and scowl at record low unemployment?
Right.
I mean, that was ridiculous. So I'm like, well, what else are they not? Sex trafficking at the border. They would not stand and clap for that. Socialism. Saying that we will not be a socialist country, not standing and clapping for that.
Picture of
There were a bunch of them going.
And testing out yeah, right.
Bernie Sanders, no way. That shot of him went over the free country and no socialism.
That was great.
I mean, there was no way he was standing for that. He was like, I can't. I'm really a communist. I can't.
I appreciate his honesty there. I will say that I'm going to give Chuck Todd a little bit of credit here. It was a bipartisan speech. It was a speech appealing to our shared civic identity, and that's great. I think that's wonderful. That is not a universal feature of the Trump administration or Donald Trump.
Right.
364 days a year, if you like him, if you hate him, he is an us versus them guy, and he is furthering that narrative of it's us versus them all the time. So I kind of understand why Democrats would go, this is an act. If the rest of the time you're going to pretend we're goblins and stuff.
Well, they had to. I mean, this is the beginning of the 2020 campaign, right? I mean, that's really what this is.
And you can't blame Trump for that. He is not the reason for the division. He's the summation. He's basically the summation of the division that we've had over the past 8 years, really. It was so divided that you got a person like President Trump.
What it seemed like his strategy, just from a construction standpoint, was, I'm going to give you something here's something that's bipartisan, now here's something that I want. And here's a kind of a guideline on how we could negotiate. You saw him, he does have a lot of bipartisan stuff to point to. I mean, the
criminal justice
reform was a big one that he mentioned, and that was a big bipartisan thing. I think, honestly,
right to try. There were a few things.
There were a few things, and honestly, that's the part of Trump that scares me more than anything else, because I think this is a huge missed opportunity by Democrats who, if they didn't come in on day one and do the Women's March before he even did anything, and they treated him as like this the worst person, like the U.S. thinks Soviet Union, right? Like it's like that level of war before anyone even started saying anything. They could have had a lot of stuff like that out of him.
Yeah, I agree. Had they gone on and go, we think you're brilliant. We would love infrastructure spending. You talked about that great idea.
Yeah, it's like this is your idea. It's not even our idea. Like if the end of the game for Democrats was to get these things done, I think they could have got them done. And I'm glad it wasn't actually their end game, because a lot of that stuff I don't want. I don't want another $1.5 trillion in infrastructure spending.
Saved our economy, Stu. What's wrong with you?
Thank you.
Eating out of buckets and
I want to say quickly, I did take the advice of myself, and I said, hey, I want a letter. I want this to go back to a letter. So what I'm going to do is read the transcript. So I was reading the transcript, and I decided for some reason to read it on the New York Times, which they gave me real-time fact checks. I have to show you this one, because tell me, what is the window they're trying to fit through on this fact check? I can't even decipher it. This is about the border.
Right.
Here it is. Now, it says President Trump described illegal border crossing as an urgent national crisis. This is false. Okay, so it is not a national crisis. Okay, we know that. That's what they just told us. Now look at the bottom of the description. It says, a record number of families have tried to cross the border recent months, overwhelming officials at the border and creating a new kind of humanitarian crisis.
So what is it?
So it's not urgent? Or it's not national? You already said it's a crisis. So what is the window they're trying to fit that fact check in? And to call that false when you're admitting later on in the same thing.
I don't think that the border is a national pressing crisis. However, I will say that there's a tad bit of editorializing that went into that fact check. I don't picture like three people with green visors going over books.
Well, like yours is at least a plausible point, right? Like you're saying it's not a crisis, and so the fact check, you would say his point is false. They're saying there is a crisis, and they're still saying it's false. That makes no sense.
I'm going to jump a little bit ahead and go back to when you talked about Bernie Sanders and socialism. this kind of reflexive, if Trump likes it, I hate it thing actually really
That's an immediate reaction.
It worried me when he brought up socialism, because I was like, oh no, now if you hate Trump, you love socialism. No, no, please don't do that.
Well, we've seen that with free trade is a great example of that, where, I mean, the Democrats were 50 years.
We're going to have a bunch of free trade socialists.
Exactly. Like, they hated free trade for 50 years, and then all of a sudden Trump's like, you know what, I don't like free trade. We love it! How dare you! All economists agree!
My communist friends were on Facebook explaining comparative advantage, and I was like, what happened?
That's what we're doing with our military and wars, right?
Yeah.
We're getting out of Syria. We want to get out of Afghanistan.
They hate it.
I say, good. No, we want war.
Yes.
However, you have to listen to people when they dress in the same color, Jeffy.
Oh my gosh,
that's when you know they're
it's
serious.
important. It's important. Listen, the Congresswoman, the Democratic Congresswoman, got together and decided that they were going to all wear white in solidarity with the suffrage movement. And that's because Donald Trump has paid no attention to the women's movement and their
One of the big problems is paying too much attention to women. That's been a problem his whole life.
Yes, it has. And I just found it fascinating that these women who have been elected to the Congress of the United States of America, they have no idea what these suffrage movement women went through. Not close.
They couldn't even cast a vote, let alone be vote for.
It's just amazing to me. And they all, it's funny, you know, you mentioned that they're all, you mentioned earlier today that they're fighting for the suffrage movement, and they all want to be recognized as separate, yet equal, but we're all going to make a statement wearing the same fashion.
Right. So we're going to break stereotypes. That's a fashion statement.
I like it as a tip of the hat to the suffragette movement. I think that's a wonderful thing that happened in American society. Where it did kind of make me a little bit uncomfortable was if that becomes a regular thing, I think it's one thing to go, you know, the suffrage movement was important, women have the right to vote, we're celebrating that, all good. Where I start to get kind of queasy is when it shifts from I'm important because of the demographic I'm a part of. Right. I'm very firmly in the individualist camp. You're important because you're an individual. I care about you in that regard. Your demographic checkbox is kind of secondary to that, and I would hope for most of our legislators. So if they keep veering that direction, it would concern me.
Let me push back against your niceness here for just a moment, because that's what he's always the nice one. Yes, of course we agree that women should vote. They've been voting for a freaking century, okay?
We all believe we're all good with it.
No one's challenging their right to vote. Yeah. Yes, it's great that they're in there, but this is just a statement against Trump because they're trying to make Trump into this bad guy, you know, against women. He hates women. He hates women. So they bring up the voting rights of women. There's no one opposing this. Like, yes, it's a nice statement, but they're making that statement for a reason that's just absurd.
And it was more than...
Were I a congressman in either party, I would go ahead and wear white just to throw off everything, and like encourage everybody else to do it. Be like, hey, we're wearing white today. Let's do this.
And it's more than just suffrage. It was, you know, because we have all these laws that don't let women work out in business. They can't do that, and there's also these laws where they can't serve in Congress.
Oh yeah, that's true. Those are all tough laws.
And equal pay.
Equal pay, all that stuff. There's all these laws that keep them from doing that, which made it even more absurd when he brought up that there's near record levels of female employment and record levels of women in Congress, and they had to stand up and cheer for that. Yeah. They had to, but it also showed how ridiculous they looked in these white costumes. My second thought on that was fear, because every time Democrats get into white costumes, things don't turn out too well.
There's history there.
You should have went with a different color, maybe. I don't know, red or something. I don't know.
We have to get into the Virginia thing as well. Quickly, though, before we go to break, I want to get to the war on meat.
Okay. There was a report that came out from the Lancet It's the Lancet Commission report, and this is what I read in the bathroom. That's why I'm usually in there 4 to 5 hours a day. It's kind of dense.
I've noticed that. It's a little weird.
And I only use stews. So what it said was it identified global warming and overconsumption of food. So global warming and obesity as being the same thing. Now there's some logic to this in that there is a large carbon footprint if you're eating cows and that kind of thing. So, but my problem with it, because at first I'm like, all right, I see what's going on here. Jeffy, you're giving me some side.
I'm listening.
What it got into that I immediately went, nope. It went, and so that's why we need to treat the food industry like we treat the tobacco industry and tax it to punish it. So we need to tax meat and tax sugar, and they're fawning over Michael Bloomberg, because Michael Bloomberg did the right thing, which is remind yokels that they're stupid.
Right.
You're a stupid fat yokel. You stupid fat yokel. I'm going to make your decisions for you because
exactly
you're too dumb. And I read it and went, no. And then it had little bits like, we need to significantly overhaul world governance, which just means capitalism. That's what that means, is get rid of capitalism, put in, I think they mentioned 42 different food taxes over the course of the report. I look at that and go, I was willing to walk with you for a little bit, and then you just went into full-on, your betters need to manage stupid fat people, and we're going to treat food like tobacco.
That's the tough thing. I think we made this point yesterday on the show when Sarah decided to actually show up to work. Which was about
shots fired. She's at like trying to she's like just spit out. Some,
she literally barely speak yesterday, so I'm not surprised. But so she, when we were talking about this yesterday, though, we had that. I made that point of like, here's the 4 things you need to actually observe when you're passing a law, and it's like the cost and benefit, and whether it's is it constitutional, and all those things are great. But if it's not moral, then it shouldn't happen, right? And so I think like you could legitimately stop a lot of people from dying by banning cigarettes, for example. Like that probably, yes, there'd be people in the black market, and there'd be other problems with it. It would create all sorts of problems.
Black markets too.
Yes, I know. You'd be leading the sales charge. But the bottom line is you probably could save some lives. But is it moral to tell someone that they can't kill themselves because they like cigarettes too much? Is it moral to tell someone, well, no, you can't eat those things? I think that's not. I don't think that's true. And there's a certain part of the Republicans, the Mike Huckabee sort of sect of the Republican Party,
they're all for that
that
too.
all believes
They
in that,
sure do.
and the vast majority of the Democratic Party believes in it. And it's a bad instinct.
The state exists to mold society into what we want, and to mold you into what we want, so that I'm not embarrassed when I go to France. That's the goal. All you yokels are making me look bad when I go on spring break.
Mm-hmm. That's really the whole goal.
That's the whole goal. It's France again.
We'll take a break back in a minute.
You can come on with more PowerPoint slides.
Oh, I do. I've got some great stuff coming up. Wait. All right, we have a lot more coming up. First, I want to tell you about, thank you, that didn't seem like I was on. So. All right, we're going to get back to the news here in just a second and why it matters. But first, a message from Riduzone is our sponsor. Now, Riduzone is something, they basically take a molecule from olive oil, and it helps you control your appetite. I know Sarah's talked about this quite a bit. Again, she didn't bother showing up for work today. Actually, this gives us a good opportunity to talk about her. Can we show the picture? Do we have the Sarah picture? This is the picture she shows all the time, and here's the Sarah commercial. I used to be super, super fat. And now I'm not. And Riduzone helps me control. Like, she looks, I mean, she's definitely a lot thinner than she was, but she beats herself up too much. She
just looks a little older in that picture. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's. I don't
oh, that's not the right one.
That's not the right one.
If you are having, I mean, I know. Look, it's what is it? February already. You probably your New Year's resolution's already in shreds. We all know that. But why not kick it off again and actually do it this time with Riduzone? Riduzone, I mean, you know, it's a small investment every day in your health. And Riduzone is something that Sarah, I know, uses all the time to control her appetite. Once you lose the weight, it's very easy to come back on.
She swears by it.
And she does. She swears by it. She loves it. So give it a shot. Riduzone is the place to go, RIDUZONE.com. If you enter the promo code TheBlaze, you'll receive 30% off a 3-month supply. And that's pretty good. You're gonna get, it's pretty cheap. It's like $1.39 a day, she always says. So there you go. 30% off a 3-month supply of Riduzone with the promo code TheBlaze. All right, let's go to Jason and identity. The identity of one of our favorite people, Elizabeth Warren.
This is, in case there was any other doubt that she's been completely lying about this, I think the last comment she made was that, okay, fine, so maybe she actually apologizing to Cherokee Nation.
Yep, she apologized.
Who were none too pleased.
None too pleased.
And by the way, whoever gave her the go-ahead to do the linkage, dumb.
I would love to be in that pitch meeting. You know what you should do? Get a DNA test. Everyone will love you because they'll see that you're 1,000 Cherokee.
That person cannot possibly be working for this no way, right? Like, it has to be fired.
So anyway, this is kind of a story on just, that she was taking advantage of this. But also, what the heck is wrong with GOP opposition research? Because it just seems like way behind the ball, the curve, on multiple cases lately. But Washington Post got their hands on it's a bar registration card for the state of Texas. This is from back in, I think, 1986. But they just got this now. I don't know why it took this long to come out. It's 1996, for crying out loud. But on this bar registration card, she puts her nationality as American Indian.
Her race,
her race. Which, for one, is kind of ridiculous. Because I don't even if you were Native American, you'd probably would you put the nation that you come from on there? You wouldn't write American Indian on there. It would either be Native American or it would be Cherokee Nation or something like that, right? So I don't know. Would you think that would further her career on this? Would that help her?
I think it's one of two things. Because I was kind of like I was sympathetic initially on this because when this first started coming out like 5 or 6 years ago. Like, I'm from Oklahoma. I grew up not too far from where she went to high school. All of my friends have Cherokee or Muskogee or something ancestry, and a lot of them are like they look just like me.
Well, so that's because of the Trail of Tears, right? And I mean, you have to be down to a 16th. You can have a 16th of bloodline and still get on the rolls for the Cherokee Nation.
You know this because you tried to get a casino open.
I actually did try to get on the rolls. Well, I couldn't prove a born. Anyway,
but there are a lot. So I was initially like, okay, like if she says that she's got Native American background, I'm not really going to contest it, even though she looks white. As the stories kept developing, and I look at that and I'm like, first of all, this huge deal about it. I think it's one of two things that she was doing, and I'll back up slightly in that she should know better than this. If you're from Oklahoma, you've probably got some idea of how tribes work because all of your friends are in tribes like me, like my friends are. Secondly, you're an attorney. So presumably you know how sovereign dependency works. I think that she did one of two things. Either she thought there would be a career advantage to it. She's swinging very hard against that. I think the other thing, which is what she was doing this time around, was I've got a percentage of victim in me, and that makes me higher on the victim hierarchy. And I can use this as an oppressed person who's been oppressed by people for thousands of years. I am fighting oppression, and it backfired because it turns out like you actually need to show up to events. You need to actually do things that involve the Native Americans before you can just claim their mantle of oppression for your own.
And one of my pastimes is to try to find the way out for these ridiculous scandals that happen. The problem, I think, with what you just said is they're both the same thing. You know, like really getting the advantage of the job and using yourself as a victim, especially in that culture of this far left culture, that's the same thing. I mean, promoting the intersectionality to get yourself ahead is very similar, and I think that that's going to be. I don't know that I can find the excuse here. I mean, it seems like she really just figured no one would ever find out about it, and she may very well at the very beginning believed. My grandma said
they're too like I've been to some powwows just as a visitor, and I have friends that go to powwows, and they're like, if she were like, you know what, I grew up going to powwows, and this is a part of my heritage, and like I know that it wasn't on the books, but in my house but I don't get that impression that she just kind of went, yep, I'm this thing.
Yeah,
and then the
grandmother, right? Her grandmother or grandfather told her that they were part of it. Right, that was kind of the whole thing.
Yeah. And it's possible. Real quick, because heritage is biting a lot of people in Virginia. I want to do some of this. Maybe we'll do a little more in overtime. But there was the blackface picture for the governor. Then there was the sex scandal with the lieutenant governor. Then now the third in line, he's got another blackface scandal. Apparently, everyone in Virginia has worn blackface on multiple occasions.
Have we reached it now? Have we reached the straw or the blackface that has broken the camel's back?
You are now governor of Virginia. You're the last in line. They're actually like you pass through there.
Do not look at any of my pack pictures.
Jeffy has lots of pictures you should not see. Luckily, none of them have to do with blackface. It's such a bizarre thing, and I don't know. Part of me thinks. There's a weird standard here. Now, you go back 30, 40 years, and even if they did something terrible or worse, I mean, people committed crimes and are elected afterwards.
Right.
This idea that, like, everything you did 30 and 40 years ago, no matter how stupid, as a 19-year-old, should prevent, it's just got to stop. And I think Republicans and conservatives are so tempted to say, well, you know that crappy standard you did to our guy? Well, we're going to codify it, and we're going to do it to you. And it's like, that's the wrong way to react to these things. I think it's better to say, look, this guy's 19 years old. I don't know. Is he shown any racist signs since?
Right.
In the last 40 years, has he shown anything that would indicate that he still believes these things? And the answer is no. I mean, don't we just move on with our lives?
The governor did attempt. He was ready to moonwalk. In that press conference the other day.
Is that true?
He was ready to moonwalk. And the wife yanked his, nope.
Which proves he still has no judgment whatsoever.
Yeah, that's true.
I would be so worried if I were like president pro tempore of the Commonwealth Senate right now. If I were like, yeah, that's terrible. I'd be like, what's going to come out about me tomorrow?
You see, like, underlings just all resigning.
They're clearly dropping it one card at a time, right? They're like, how many cards did they got?
All right, we got to take a break. Back with more in just a second. So today sucks, to be perfectly honest about it. Everything that's gone on today has been paling in comparison to something that we've kind of all experienced here personally in the Blaze family with Doc Thompson passing away. If you remember at the beginning of the show, it was Glenn, me, Pat, Sarah, and Doc. This show was one of the first shows I really worked with Doc on a regular basis. It was, I've heard his show and knew him for a long period of time, but being able to kind of interact with him and pick his brain in this context was a lot of fun. And he passed away yesterday completely, tragically. You can look up all the details online. I would like you to go online, though, and go to Doc Thompson's GoFundMe page. It was up to what, Jason?
Almost 64,000. The goal is 20,000. Everyone, this audience is coming through amazingly.
Excellent.
It's awesome.
I mean, he's got his, he's left a wife,
Three kids.
three kids, two really young ones, and an older one, and they could need the help.